Debate intensifies over what happens next after President Trump signed an executive order to begin shutting down the Department of Education.
And as Sabrina Wilson reports, opponents vow to keep fighting.
President Trump's executive order to begin dismantling the U.S. Department of Education draws praise and sharp criticism.
We think this is a good step for states, for local communities who want to have more control over education policy. We think that's the right place where parents and community leaders have the most influence and the most impact to help kids.
The department doesn't just dole out billions of dollars. It also has an Office of Civil Rights, which enforces laws that prohibit discrimination in programs and activities that receive DOE funds.
The U.S. Department of Education is the people who make sure that the Title I funding and the funding for special needs gets to the right states, is being implemented right.
Specifically, the laws prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, and on the basis of age. The laws extend to all state education agencies, elementary and secondary schools, colleges, and universities. Former New Orleans Mayor Mark Morial, who is president and CEO of the National Urban League, said the organization vehemently condemns what he called President Trump's reckless and dangerous executive order to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. And he said the short-sighted and politically motivated action is an outright attack on the fundamental rights of America's students, particularly Black, brown students with disabilities and low-income children who rely on federal protections to ensure they receive a quality education. Daniel Ersbaumer is CEO of the Pelican Institute.
We expect this should mean more money into the classrooms, more control for local, both at the state and the local school board level, fewer man hours and time and money spent complying with federal regulations, and frankly, probably better enforcement of things like civil rights laws because they're housed at the appropriate place in the federal government.
The Southern Poverty Law Center's president and CEO, Margaret Wong, said her organization will fight Trump's executive order alongside educators, students, and communities who understand that education is a fundamental right, not a privilege. Ashana Bigard is a parent and public school advocate.
The feds came down and they really, helped oversee that process of making sure that schools were actually serving children with special needs.
It would take Congress to fully implement the Education Department, or eliminate the Education Department, I should say, because it's a cabinet-level agency. The Urban League is demanding that Congress intervene to block what it calls catastrophic action.